Emma Carter had driven through many storms in her life, but that night, the sky over northern Michigan looked like something torn open. She was halfway down a quiet road that wrapped around Lake Ridge when the first flash of lightning hit the water, spreading light across the entire shoreline. She tightened her fingers on the steering wheel and leaned closer to the windshield, trying to see through the thick rain that slapped against the glass. She hadn't meant to be out this late, and she definitely hadn't intended to stop at Daniel Reeves' house again. She had already dropped off the community project folder earlier that day, but when she realized she forgot to leave the last document, it's an important one she had spent hours preparing. She thought it would be a quick drop and go. She didn't expect a storm to appear out of nowhere by the time she reached Daniel's long driveway. Her clothes were damp from the humidity inside the car, her hair a mess from the rushed evening, and her nerves completely worn down from the near-blind drive. She parked beside the porch and took one deep breath before stepping into the rain. The downpour was instant, soaking her from shoulders to shoes in just a few seconds. She hurried to the door and knocked quickly, hoping he was still awake. The door opened faster than she expected. Daniel stood there, out of breath, as if he had run to get it. His dark hair was still wet from an evening jog, and he had a towel around his neck. When he saw her, surprise spread across his face, but not annoyance, more like concern. "Emma, what happened?" "You look like someone who drove through a waterfall," she said, trying to laugh even though she was shaking. "Come inside," he insisted immediately. She stepped in, and the warm air from his house washed over her like a blanket. Daniel closed the door behind her, shutting out the sound of pounding rain. The living room lights gave the place a soft golden glow. It smelled faintly of coffee and pine candles. It's the kind he liked to keep burning when he worked late. He grabbed a clean towel from a nearby chair and handed it to her. "You're freezing. Sit down, I'll get you something warm." Emma felt her heart calm a little. Daniel always had a gentle way of speaking, as if he didn't want to push or pressure anyone. She respected him for that. For months, they had been working together on the community project meetings, planning sessions, calls, occasional dinners when they needed more time. She had grown comfortable around him. Maybe more comfortable than she intended to be. When he returned with a mug of hot tea, she finally handed him the folder. "I just came to drop this off." "I didn't realize the weather would turn this bad," she said. He took the folder but barely glanced at it. His eyes were fixed on the soaked hem of her jacket. "You shouldn't be out in this storm. They're sending alerts now. Roads are blocked on the east side." He paused. "You're not driving back tonight." Emma opened her mouth to argue, but another blast of thunder shook the window. She closed her mouth again. Daniel's tone softened. "Stay here. You can take the guest room. It's not fancy, but it's warm." She let the towel hang around her shoulders, feeling her resistance melt. "I don't want to be a bother." "You're not," he said simply. "I'd worry too much if you left." That one sentence, soft, honest, unguarded, sent a strange warmth through her chest. She didn't know what to say to it, so she followed him to the hallway, listening to the sound of rain hammering the roof. The guest room was small but cozy. A quilted blanket, a small lamp, a narrow bed, and a window that looked out toward the lake. The storm had turned the outside world into a blur of silver and dark shapes. "I'll find you some dry clothes." Daniel said, "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently, "but I want to." He left before she could respond. Emma pressed her hand against her chest, trying to calm the flutter that had started there. She wasn't supposed to feel like this, not tonight. Not after months of trying to keep their connection simple and professional. Daniel had always been careful around her, but there were moments, tiny ones. When she thought he felt something too, he returned with a soft sweatshirt and a pair of joggers. "They might be a little big, but at least they're dry." "Thank you," she whispered. He gave her a small smile before stepping back into the hallway to give her privacy. After changing, Emma felt warmer but strangely restless. The rain outside made the room feel even quieter. She sat on the bed, listening to the storm and thinking about the way Daniel looked at her when she arrived, surprised. Yes, but also relieved. Like seeing her safe mattered more to him than the late tower interruption. She lay back on the bed, hoping sleep would come quickly. But every minute felt longer than the one before. The storm made the windows tremble, and the unfamiliar room made her feel exposed, as if her thoughts were too loud. She tried focusing on the soft glow of the lamp. But her breathing remained uneven. She couldn't ignore the feeling in her chest. It wasn't just worry or nerves or storm anxiety. It was something else, something she had been quietly carrying for months. Something she had pushed aside because she didn't want to misread the closeness between them. She finally sat up, pressing her feet to the floor. The house was dim, but not silent. She could hear faint footsteps in the hallway, a small sign that Daniel was awake too. Maybe he couldn't sleep either. Maybe he was thinking about the same unspoken things. Then came the knock. Soft. 2 taps. Hesitant. Emma froze. Emma. Daniel's voice came through the door, low and warm. Are you still awake? Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure if it was the storm or the closeness of his voice that made her heart beat faster. Yes. She finally managed to answer. There was a pause, a long, thoughtful pause that held more emotion than words. I didn't want to disturb you, he said. I just wanted to check if you're okay. The storm got worse. She walked to the door, her hand hovering over the handle. Something in her chest felt like it was opening. Like a truth she had kept quiet was rising to the surface. She opened the door only a little, enough to see him standing there. His hair was still slightly messy, his t-shirt soft from many washes. His expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. I'm fine, she whispered. Just not used to sleeping in a new place. He gave a small, understanding nod. I get that. It's strange having someone here tonight. Not in a bad way, just different. She could tell he was nervous, though he tried to hide it. They stood there in the soft hallway light, neither stepping forward nor stepping back. Emma felt warmth rising to her cheeks. She didn't know what he wanted to say, but she could feel something shifting between them, something that had been waiting, quietly, for the right moment. The storm outside finally cracked, sending a loud rumble across the room. Emma flinched slightly, and Daniel's expression softened even more. I can stay a little, he offered gently, just until the storm calms. She didn't know why that simple offer felt like the beginning of something new, but it did. Maybe because it wasn't dramatic. Maybe because it wasn't forced. Maybe because it was honest and caring, exactly like him. Emma stepped aside, just enough for him to sit on the chair near the bed. He didn't intrude, didn't move too close. He simply sat there, hands resting on his knees, offering quiet company in a night that felt heavier than expected. The storm kept roaring outside, but inside the small guest room, the silence between them grew warm and comforting. Emma felt her breathing slow. The tension in her shoulders loosened. She wasn't alone. Not anymore, and when Daniel finally spoke again, his voice was soft, almost a whisper. If you need anything, I'm right here. The words settled deep in her heart. She didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but she knew one thing for certain. Tonight, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't meant to be. The moment he stayed in the room with her, the moment he offered quiet comfort instead of distance, was the moment everything began to change. And deep down, Emma knew she wouldn't be alone for long. Emma opened the guest room door just a few inches, enough to peek at Daniel standing in the hallway. The storm outside had softened, leaving the air heavy with humidity and the faint scent of wet pine. His dark hair was still slightly damp, his shirt clinging lightly to his broad shoulders. There was something in his eyes that made her heart skip a mix of concern, hesitation, and something she had quietly been hoping for. I just wanted to check on you, he said quietly, careful not to sound demanding. His voice carried that warmth that always seemed to reach right inside her chest. The storm's getting calmer, but I wasn't sure if you were comfortable. Emma stepped back slightly, feeling an urge she hadn't expected. I'm fine, she said softly. Just not used to sleeping somewhere new. He nodded, as if understanding more than her words told. I get that. It's different having someone here tonight. She didn't know why, but his honesty made her chest tighten. "It is different," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But not bad." Daniel's lips curved in a small, uncertain smile. He leaned slightly against the doorframe, giving her space, but still close enough that she could feel his presence. They stood there for a few moments, neither moving forward, neither retreating. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was alive. It carried all the things they hadn't said, all the feelings they had buried under casual conversations and professional smiles. Finally, he spoke again, softer this time. "I've been worried. About you. Driving in that storm. And about you being alone." Emma felt a gentle warmth spread through her chest. "You didn't have to worry so much," she said. "I was careful." "I know," he replied, "but I can't help it. I've always cared." The words hit her softly, like sunlight through clouds. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her emotions steady. "I care too," she admitted. She hadn't said it aloud before, not like this. Not with just the two of them. Quiet in the house while the storm faded outside. Daniel stepped a fraction closer, still cautious. "I didn't want to say it if it made you uncomfortable," he whispered. "But I can't pretend I don't feel it." Her breath caught. She realized how much she had been holding back for months, how much she had feared misreading him, how much she had wanted this exact moment without knowing it. "I don't want you to pretend either," she said. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Emma could feel her heart beating fast, but not from fear. It was a pulse of something new, something alive that had waited too long. She could see the honesty in Daniel's eyes, the quiet longing, the respect, the care. It was magnetic, and she felt drawn to it in a way that scared her, thrilled her, and made her ache at the same time. "Would it be okay if I stayed for a while?" he asked, his voice low and tentative. "Yes," she whispered, almost before she thought. "Please." He stepped fully into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd her. They didn't touch yet, but their closeness was enough. Enough for her to feel the warmth of him. Enough for her to feel the shift in their relationship. The storm outside had left the air electric, but inside there was a calm that felt profound, grounding, and full of possibilities. They talked quietly, not about the storm or the folder she had brought, not about work or the usual small talk. Instead, they talked about things that mattered, about loneliness, about fears they hadn't shared, about small dreams and regrets. Every word seemed to draw them closer, not physically, but emotionally. Emma realized that she hadn't shared this level of honesty with anyone in months. "Maybe not ever," Daniel admitted. He had been feeling a quiet emptiness, a kind of restlessness he couldn't quite explain. Emma nodded, recognizing the feeling in herself. She had carried it too, hiding it behind smiles, responsibilities, and social routines. Now, in the soft glow of the lamp and the fading storm, it felt safe to share it. They laughed softly about small, absurd things, inside jokes from their project, memories from childhood. Little stories that seemed meaningless at the time, but now felt significant. Emma noticed that every time Daniel laughed, his eyes lit up in a way that made her feel seen. Not just looked at, but truly seen. And every time he looked at her, she felt the same way. As if every worry, every fear, every hesitation could melt in that gaze. The room grew warmer, though the storm had left a chill outside. Emma realized that this warmth wasn't from the lamp or the tea Daniel had brought earlier. It was from him. From the way he spoke, the way he listened, the way he made her feel important, understood, and safe. Then came another pause. One of those pauses that didn't need filling, the kind that allowed unspoken thoughts to exist without fear. Emma noticed the tension in her shoulders easing. Her breathing slowed. She felt herself leaning slightly closer to him. Daniel noticed too. He didn't push or question. He simply mirrored the closeness in the quietest, most respectful way possible. "Emma," he said finally, his voice softer than a whisper, "I want you to know that staying here tonight, it's not just about the storm. I wanted to be here. With you." Her heart fluttered. She wanted to reply, but the words felt too big for a whisper. Finally, she said, "I'm glad you are." And that was enough. They didn't need grand gestures. They didn't need dramatic confessions or sweeping movements. They simply existed in that shared moment. To people who had wanted closeness for months, finally giving themselves permission to be near. To be honest and to feel, Don Neal moved his hand slightly, resting it near hers, not touching, just close enough to show he was present. Emma felt a jolt, a reminder that physical connection didn't have to be rushed to be meaningful. She rested her head on his shoulder, careful, tentative, but fully willing. That simple gesture said everything words couldn't. She wasn't alone. He wasn't going anywhere. And for the first time in a long time, she felt completely safe in someone else's presence. They stayed like that. Silent, but connected, listening to the rain softening against the windows. The minutes passed, but it didn't feel like time at all. It felt like they had stepped into a different world of space where honesty, care, and quiet affection were more important than fear, expectation, or past hesitations. Daniel finally spoke again. Voice low and steady. You can stay as long as you need. Tonight, tomorrow, whenever. Emma lifted her head slightly, her eyes meeting his. I don't just need tonight, she admitted. I think I've been needing this all along. He smiled softly, the kind of smile that warmed her from the inside out. Then it's yours, he said. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply let the quiet stretch, letting each second carry weight, meaning, and unspoken promises. Emma realized how much she had longed for this, someone who could sit with her, listen, understand, and care without judgment. Daniel had always been that person, but tonight it was undeniable, tangible, and real. The storm had passed, leaving only the gentle dripping of water from the roof and the distant rumble of thunder fading into the night. Outside, the world seemed still peaceful and safe. Inside, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. She wasn't just safe in the house. She was safe in his presence, safe in his heart. Daniel shifted slightly, careful not to disturb her, but close enough that she could feel his warmth fully. We'll figure this out together, he said softly. Emma's lips curved into a small smile. I'd like that, she whispered, and just like that. The guest room, small, simple, unremarkable, became a place of new beginnings, a place where silence spoke louder than words, where closeness was more meaningful than gestures. And where two hearts finally allowed themselves to be together without fear. They didn't need dramatic confessions. They didn't need bold gestures. The quiet, the gentle presence, the warmth, the honesty, that was enough. Emma realized that love in its purest form didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered in the storm, in the pause between words, in the space where two people finally let themselves be fully present for each other. And in that small guest room, with the rain softening outside and the soft lamplight spilling across the walls, Emma and Daniel discovered something that neither had expected but both had quietly hoped for. A connection that was real, honest, and unshakable. For the first time in a long time, Emma knew she wouldn't be alone. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not for a long time. And as she rested her head back on Daniel's shoulder, she felt it deep in her chest. This was the start of something beautiful, something mature, tender, and full of promise, something worth holding on to. The storm was over, but what had begun in its wake was only just starting.